Well, good afternoon. You're almost survivors of this experience, all these conversations that are going to take root and change your lives, because conversations change the world. And I'm so delighted that in this particular session, we're going to have the chance to hear from some really profound thinkers, to add to the list of profound thinkers you've already heard from, and leaders. Nino Rizzo from Healing Place in Louisiana. Just a wonderful ministry there. Nino will be speaking with us. His upcoming book, Servolution, just says it well. The way forward is through service. We're going to hear from Neil Cole, who is the founder, director, chief executive, president, chairman of the board for Church Multiplication Associates in over 35 countries now. This notion of simple church taking root, thousands and thousands and thousands of these iterations of this particular approach to ministry, and Neil will be sharing out of that background with us. Matt Carter in 2002 established Church Austin Community Church, like so many people in 2002, fresh starts, fresh opportunities, fresh thinking. And that church has taken on great root with a fresh ministry in that area. He and Chris Tomlin founded that together, and Matt's going to bring to us a word to close out our session today, and you'll be blessed by all three of these. It's my privilege from Leadership Network to work with wonderful colleagues, and at the end of our session, thank you for coming and share a little bit more with you. But to start our session today, they've given me 45 minutes to talk with you about, teasing. I don't use up energy grinning, so you'll have to just kind of figure it out. I just do what I'm told, and there's a clock somewhere, and I don't know where it's running, but none of those intros count against it. I think we've got 15 minutes from here, so y'all can count it. And I'm just a staff person trying to grow into this shirt that I got from corporate. This actually was going to be the tent for the outdoor. I took this out this morning, and I think, boy, have I got work to do. But mostly what I do is roam around the country and persecute Christian leaders around this theme. Well, because you don't get enough of that, from church members and others. I mean, you need to come to conferences and have tension put on you, because there are people right now at home plotting about again. But I don't want to bring that up because I wouldn't want you to enjoy this session. We're going to be talking, the three of us, if I ever get to it, the four of us, around this notion of this whole emerging missional thing. And of course, everything's missional now. I mean, if you want to get a book published, put missional on the title. Missional dog, raising. And so it kind of has a real, there's a real sense that we may lose what that really means while we rush to everything, be it. And so we each have our own takes on this, but bottom line is, all of that talk around there is just a recognition that God seems to be up to something. And it's bigger than us, and it seems to be a shift in the conversation that He is initiating. It's a shift in the conversation of how the church sees itself, and how the church sees itself in the world, and how the church sees the world. All of that's wrapped up in this. And probably someone has rehearsed this for you before now. I haven't been able to be in all the sessions, but you are well aware, of course, of what's going on in the church worldwide. I was just with Steve Douglas, who's the head of Campus Crusade. He and I had dinner together a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about their research in India. And what we know about the church over there, India, in the start of this decade, of the 2000s, 2% Christian. Within a year and a half, if current stuff goes, it will be 10% Christian. Now, if you want to translate that over to numbers, that's 80 million new believers in India. And, of course, most of them in house churches, that kind of thing, because they don't know how to do, church right. And as a matter of fact, I had someone at a conference came up to me. I was talking about this, and they said, I run a missionary support agency in India, and we know we have documented conversions of over 10,000 converts a month in just one northern province. And then he said one of the best things I've ever heard. He said, the church is growing so fast over there, we don't have time to do evangelism. That's one of the best things I've ever heard, because all over North America I tell churches, hey, quit evangelizing, it's killing us. Of course, for most churches I speak in, they're not doing it anyhow, so, it's just kind of a relief. Because I haven't been to your church, that wouldn't be true for you. But because some of the ways that but I don't want to talk about that. Or you go to China, where the church is growing like tens of thousands of people every single day. I mean, estimates run way north of there, but I mean, I don't want to totally make up statistics. So let me just be, in the China, and tens of thousands of people every day. Or go to Africa, which was 3% Christian in the beginning of the 1900s, 47% Christian today, and growing in spite of AIDS, civil war, genocide, everything you can throw at that continent. Or go to post-tsunami Indonesia, where we see, we could have fit everybody that missionaries have been working with Aceh people for decades. All the converts could have fit down here. Post-tsunami Indonesia, Christian aid comes in. People show the love of Jesus. We demonstrate the gospel, and entire villages are coming to Jesus. And so you've got this kind of thing going on in the world. There's a Pentecost going on in the world every single hour. Would you like to take a wild guess, just a wild random shot at where we're not seeing Pentecost every hour? Yeah. That's not to devalue the work that you're doing, but the truth is, macro sense, we are in the backwaters of the Christian movement on planet Earth. This is hard for us to get, because we know that this is God's home zip code, and He's working everything out as foreign mission. But the truth is, it's going to require a lot of humility. The missional church is about an entry point into God's word. I mean, there are conferences, not this one, but I've been to all my life, where we teach people to go home and flap their arms and try to get a breeze up. Or you can hoist your sails and catch the wind that's already blowing. And the missional church is about getting in on what God is up to in this magnificent work that's going on all over the globe and bringing it home. Not just reading and hearing about it in India and China and Indonesia and Africa, or taking a mission trip to experience it there and then come home. But it's about experiencing Pentecost here and praying that God would visit North America in the way that He's visiting other parts of the world. Because I haven't given up on that in my lifetime that I would live the book of Acts, which is what some believers are getting the chance to do in other parts of the world. And so there's some things I think about this whole what do we need to look for? How do we need to how will we know that we're kind of tacking toward this mighty wind that's blowing? And I have 75 things that I just kind of want to think to lift up as indicators. Okay, maybe 5. Maybe. If I get to it, I don't see a clock anywhere. Where is that clock? Is it behind me? Put it up on the screen so I can keep up then, even though I said I didn't want it. Holy cow. Hey, take that clock off the screen. What kind of deal is that? Somebody's pushing the seconds through on a quick. We all are going to have to listen really quick. Basically, what I'll be sharing is what happens when we flip the lenses. We've been looking through one set of lenses. We've been looking at the kingdom that we hear about through church lenses, so that we kind of been shrink wrapping what we think God's agenda and God's up to down to our experience of church. But missional is about flipping those lenses and looking at the church through kingdom lenses, which is a very different way of seeing. And once you put those lenses on, some stuff pops out that just wasn't there. Maybe we couldn't see. But the Spirit is gifting us with this. So I think you should look maybe for a few hallmarks of this. And the first one is, I think you're going to hear more and more conversation about the church moving from a what to a who. You see, as long as the church is a what, like a vendor of religious goods and services, or a place where religious things happen, or an institute at the corner of 3rd and Main, then most of our conversations revolve around how do we fix it, how do we deconstruct it, how do we move in on this it that somehow is out here separate from me. I belong to it. I go to it. I support it. We hire people to run it, and all of that kind of stuff. And so we wind up with conversations about our churches. A church, a church, a church, a church. Nothing wrong with that, except that there's a dynamic in the place where the Spirit seems to be blowing that church has moved away from the what to a who. The people of God. You know, I am the church. I'm not all the church, but I am the church. Everywhere I go, the church is. Because there is, if we have the theology of the continuing incarnation of Jesus. Do you hear what I'm not saying? I'm not saying that a non-connected, non-atom, I do not know of a single follower of Jesus who's got the real DNA of that wants to live a single atomized, privatized existence apart from other. You are drawn to people just like a dog that acts like a dog. You know, I mean, it's part of your nature if you are a true follower of Jesus to look out for other followers of Jesus. But it's this realization that I am the church. You are. Who? Which allows for a broader bandwidth of what we celebrate in terms of church expression. Because if you move from church as a what to church as a who, then you suddenly begin to you're able to legitimize and celebrate and release and launch a whole bunch of expressions of church that right now feels like you're leaving the church to do. Or that people that are post-congregationalists or in their toxicity of moving, the silliness of some of the discussion. I agree with Greg, our fellow South Carolinian over here, the silliness of some of our discussions about attractional, incarnation, all this kind of, no, it's not about, nuking one, but it's about allowing this broader bandwidth of what we can celebrate. So church is a who, is that research scientist at the University of Washington sitting across the table from me saying, Reggie, it doesn't matter what my church does. The guys that work with me in the research up here at the University of Washington, they are never going to go to church. Never. They are not church people. It is besides, they work all weekend. They're kind of on different. We could substitute a whole bunch of cultures in that. Hospitality industry people, fire, protection people, whole cultures that we're counting on not coming to church. But what we've got to figure out, so how does the church be at the University of Washington? Not how do you do church there, but how does the church be through him? He figured out, well, I better be the church there if there's going to be the church. And being able to come alongside people with that sense of mission. Because it's not like we as the church have a mission. The mission precedes us. The mission has a church. And so how the mission gets done, there's a reason for us. We got cut in on the deal so that we could partner with God in this thing, but we're not the point. The mission's the point. Which moves me to the second of these things. What's going on with the clock? How are we doing? Oh, dear Lord. All right, I know the introductions had to eat into that. All right, and didn't I introduce for about 4 minutes? Yeah. All right. We're going to have to kind of develop a little different notion then in the who world, Whoville. Church is who. What the role of the church is in the sense of not just our identity, but how, here's what I'm saying. We're going to have to quit thinking of church as a destination and think of it as a connector. Now, we're a little more than that, and I know every analogy breaks down, but I'll just give you one that comes to my mind. Every week, since I live in Columbia, South Carolina, every week I navigate at least once a week Atlanta, Hartsfield, Jackson Airport. It's the busiest airport in the world, 200,000 people a day or something like that. Planes scheduled 1.3 seconds apart. And if one is late at 8 o'clock in the morning by the time we get to my flight, It's 3 days later. So Hartsfield Jackson International Airport occasionally, like every week, gets the scorecards confuscated. And apparently they think they're winning when all the planes are on the ground close to the hub and the concourse is full of people. Now, I want to tell you, when all the planes are on the ground close to the concourse, to the hub, and the concourse is full of people, you got a bunch of mad people. In fact, this is where Al-Qaeda is recruiting, down on Terminal B. I mean, because there are people down there, they want to kill something. And so, it's just, because you know why? Because it's a screwed up scorecard that thinks we're winning when we've got all this activity and bustling. So, no, the real, the airport is not a destination, for crying out loud. I mean, nobody in here has got, on their coffee table at home, great airports of the world. Like, I spent 3 days there. That was just fabulous. You got to go. I mean, are you kidding? I mean, the airport has a function that you want running water and food would be nice occasionally, especially if we got to spend the night. Usually, but I won't talk about that. The point is, the airport has a very important, but it's not the destination. When you screw the scorecard up, you screw up people's lives. Because people are wanting to go somewhere. And the destination is life. This is why Jesus said, I've come to give you church and give it to you more abundantly. See, once we kind of get this, because the kingdom is very life-centric, it's very people-centric. And once we flip our lenses and look at the church, it's about then, yeah. We're not the destination, but people need, there's a huge need to connect through us to get to where they want to go. We have a role in this. Good night. All right, there's a third thing that I wish I'd thought about earlier. By the way, that little shift, you see, it's not about attractional versus incarnational. Good heavens. I mean, Jesus was an attraction, for crying out loud. I mean, he showed up in town, all kinds of people. But it's about, but you're going to move from what to who by necessity, not just economic necessity, but because the Spirit is pulling us toward a more incarnational deal. So it's about how does an incarnational modality invade even our attractional models? So that when we are together, the discussion is not about, is this a fabulous experience or what? Although it sure should be, because but mostly it's the gathering of folks to celebrate what God is doing away from here. See? So that we bring a story, Corinthians. We bring a text. We bring an episode. This is where I've seen God this week. This is what he's doing. And people are fueled then, for use some of your analogies that I hear, fueled then for the mission that's not being played out here, but is being played out in those life destinations that we're connecting you through to get to. You're going to see the rise of missional communities, if this was point number 3, if I had time to talk about. Meaning that people who take this seriously and people who don't. But you're going to just see more and more. If you hear at house church or it doesn't. The point is, there's going to be a lot of emergence of a lot of church life forms that we currently don't have a taxonomy for. And my hope is that those of us in the established church that got here first to know it all about it, how it ought to be, can be free enough and brave enough not to affirm every life form, because some of it ain't going to survive. But you don't have to shoot it before it gets a chance to crawl out a little bit. Why not let some of it flounder around and make some, and learn to celebrate some. It's like this. Okay, oil companies can process the oil that's being pumped out of the ground. Saudi Arabia stick a straw in the ground, suck oil out. It's just there. It's floating on oil. But there are other oil reserves in our world, shale oil and sand oil, that's very deeply embedded. It's going to require Very different technology. It's going to be very expensive. It's going to be a long time coming. There are going to be some things that we don't do right. But guess, of course, oil companies are buying up all of the process patents to get to these oil reserves. What I want you to do is to get the process patents for alternative technologies besides what we're just doing now, to reach deeply embedded pockets of our culture that are never coming to the mothership no matter what we do. And so you're going to see the emergence of this, whether or not we bless it, but I just don't want us to miss the party. Which then brings me to the last thing that I should have been saying. We're going to see a shift in the scorecard. Big time. In a church-centric world, we measure what shows up here and in our churches and activities related to that. In the missional world, we dare to measure impact beyond us. Is it how many kids we have in Vacation Bible School? It's not an unimportant number. But would we have the courage to say how many hungry kids are there in our town? How many marriages are better off this year than last year? Just in case this is where people are living. How many people have a roof over there? All those kinds of things that Jesus talks about that we know capture the heart of God. Do we have the courage to say we will stake our scorecards not on how busy we are and on our stuff, but in the mission world, what impact are we able to make in the world that we are called to be the church in? Not do church and invite them to join us. Well, John the Baptist had some ambivalences and some questions. He comes down to the end of it, thrown in jail, and he sends his most trusted advisors to Jesus, with the matrix question. Are you the one? Now, we could have had a scenario where Jesus says, oh, come on, John. You're my cousin. You grew up with those stories. Your parents got an angel too, for crying out loud. When your dad found out, he couldn't say a word. All this. You know these. Good night, John. You so disappoint me. Why? For years, Jesus' answer to them puzzled me. I'm thinking, come on, Jesus. John's on death row, for crying out loud. He deserves a straight yes or no, up or down answer. That's not Jesus' response. Remember what he says? Go and tell John. The lame are walking. Blind are seeing. Go and tell John that the kingdom's busting out. He'll figure it out. Hear the confidence in that answer? Because then Jesus turns to that crowd and says, my cousin John, there's not been a better man born. Hey, gang, if you don't have questions, you're not paying attention. If you don't have ambivalences, then I don't know if you're awake. But it's not your ambivalence or mine that will be the determiner. It will be whether or not we are looking and seeing. Because if you will, if I will, if we together will have the courage to look for a world where the impact of what we do is beyond us, then it might be said one day, that group of leaders at that intersection of history in North America is the greatest generation of leaders. They got it.